Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hello everyone. Thanks for coming to the Think Small podcast. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today we're talking with Chris Becker, CEO of Bionix, a 40-year-old medical device company that literally started with the founder's instinct and a good idea. Chris came up through the ranks. He started as an intern, became a marketing coordinator, and here we are 21 years later, and he's running the show. And here's what makes his story important. I love this. Bionix just brought in private equity, Argosy Capital, for the first time ever. And instead of imploding under that pressure, Chris actually became the force that made the business more mature, more strategic, and way more disruptive. Chris, welcome to the Think Small podcast. It's so nice to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Denise. Very happy to be with you today.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about Bionix. What business are you in? What are the products? A little bit more about the company.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, 42-year-old company, so founded back in 1984, partnership between Dr. Drew Milligan and Dr. Jim Hutner. It started with ideas, innovation. They both had an idea for different products, and one was going through pediatric residency, one was a professor in radiation therapy, but they decided to give it a go. They thought they had some good products, and so they built the business alongside their other careers, and it just took off, and they just continued to innovate. So our core space from the beginning has really focused around primary care, pediatrics, which is where Jim had a practice for 25 years. Very inventive mind. So he was in practice. He'd see the problems, procedural problems that pediatricians and physicians, in different specialties had on a day-to-day basis. And he would come in and work with our product development engineers and create a solution. And that's how we built Bionix. So it was always very much, in the world of clinicians, physicians, and nurse practitioners and nurses, and the challenges they face, procedural challenges, and how do we solve them? And we really tried to stay focused in, that primary care space, which kind of extends, you get into urgent care, the ER, because that's used a lot as a primary care site. Even into long-term care, we're getting, primary care on a day-to-day basis, for the residents. So we've just continued to grow around innovation, as an organization. That's still what we do today. So still very collaborative, innovative culture within Bionix, and continue to listen to customers and try to continue to create for them.
Yeah, I think so. My background is 30 years in medical device sales and marketing. And I think one thing that maybe our listeners don't realize is that innovation doesn't happen as rapidly in pediatrics as it does in adult, because the markets are smaller, so companies want to invest there. And so a lot of these clinicians are having to jerry-rig devices that were made for adults in order to work in a pediatric clinic. And so I love the fact that your founders, saw a need, put pen to paper, and, solved a problem. It's a great story.
Yeah, and that's actually what you just described is actually, we look for that. Mm-hmm. So when we see procedures that are being done routinely, and it's a clinician who's just piecing something together because they don't have a solution they feel is a good one, so they're piecing something together, that's an opportunity for us. And that's where we like to step in and put some ideas to it. And we usually can come up with a really good solution that is specifically designed for that, which a lot of times could be more cost effective at the end of the day, but it's a better solution procedurally for the clinician and the patient.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your background. You've been there 26 years, right?
Yes, 26 years.
You're kind of a co-builder at this point. And then in 2021, Argosy Capital comes in. But here's the thing. You spent years trying to make that deal happen. It almost didn't happen. So tell us the path to getting the founders to the exit that they wanted and what you had to do to the company to make that deal real.
So backing up a little bit to 2013 is when I became president of the organization. And so started to work on the business and, work along with Drew Milligan, who then was the CEO at the time. As we kind of got into that stage, that's where the conversation started with Drew and Jim about looking for an exit opportunity and what that might look like. And I think very similar to a lot of founders of companies, there's an idea of what they want the value to be in the organization. And then at that point in time, here's what the actual value of the organization is. And if there's a gap there, how do we close that gap so that we can provide an exit for them? And it's at a number that makes sense for whoever that investor that's going to come in. And so there was that, but knowing that's where we were going also is that looking at the business, we needed to professionalize the business. We needed to kind of transition from very entrepreneurial but lifestyle type company to a professional business that would be well positioned when you would transition into a private equity world, which is, where we thought we were heading. So we started back then just kind of looking at that point. We have 4 different divisions. All were very different, operated differently, had different profitability, and we tried to really kind of standardize, bring things together. We added processes to the business so that how we operate is as a high level medical device company. So the look and feel of the building and the space and the process by which we follow is the same process in the building that we expect of our supplier partners, our injection molding partners that help us make our products. It's very consistent. And so we started to put those things in place. We went from a ISO 9001 to a 1345 medical device standard. It was across the board. Put a 5S process in that, we attached it to the office area as well as the manufacturing space. So again, really trying to professionalize the organization operationally, but also commercially, how we go to market, the types of partners that we brought into the business to help us grow the business together. And again, all along the way, we were increasing the value of the organization so that, a few years later, now we can have a real conversation about, okay, let's start to explore an exit and go through the process. And even at that point, I think we went through that process 3 times before we had a successful exit and for Drew and Jim. And that actually happened basically at the very end of 2020. And everyone knows what the year 2020 was like. And it was very challenging for us. And yet we were still able to operate the business during that time and create a successful transaction for Drew and Jim.
Yeah. So 3 tries at bat, right? And then you didn't bite yet to bring on private equity. What did you learn from those things? Was that what told you what private equity is looking for and helped you identify like where do we need to up our game? Even to the decor of the the building.
Yeah.
Those are things that I think some founders resist because it feels like big bureaucracy, right? But what did you learn from those 3 times at bat?
Yeah, I think that's all part of the process. It's part of the process for us, running the business, but also for the ownership to like you said, to really understand, okay, we have to change and we have to do these things if we want to get to the finish line that we're looking for. And so they become more open to those changes where prior to that, it might be like, well, why do we have to change? We've been successful, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But as you start to connect it through to, you start talking to private equity and investors and they're looking at the business and asking questions. Yeah, it changes the way you think about it. And it gives a nice motivation to make those changes. So again, it improves the business and it improves their exit, and then it prepares the business for that next step,
Yeah.
in our life cycle.
And maybe it's helpful for the founders to hear that from a third party as opposed to somebody who's living with them every day, right?
Absolutely. That couldn't be more true.
Well, let's go back to your background. So you started as an intern, worked your way up, and became CEO in 2013, as you said. And at that point, Bionix was still very much a founder-led company, as you said. And with the 4 divisions, you had told me that 3 of them weren't making any money. So what did you see and what made you decide to restructure before, long before you even entertained the first PE conversation?
When you look at each individual business, it was a very entrepreneurial company. So, and there's a lot of companies out there like that, very successful overall. But if you look at each individual component of the business, it's like, okay, there are some things that we do really well over here in the main division that we're not applying for some reason. We're not applying to these other business units. And the question is why? If this is who we are and what we do best, how can we apply those principles to those other divisions? And the thought is if we do, I think they'll be more successful. And so we started to do that and again, professionalize, but also apply the things that we do really well, which is, some of those divisions had a lot of Me Too products. Me Too, low margin, low value prop. It's just a different option than maybe what a competitor might be doing. We followed versus leading, things like that. So we started to, again, restructure that and refocus on let's be a leader. Let's find opportunities to bring innovation into those spaces that we can differentiate ourselves. And then again, the things that we're doing to professionalize the business will impact each one of those as well. And then the last thing we did is we stopped treating them as four different divisions and we brought it in and truly became one company, where all of our team understands the different, we'll call them product lines now, as opposed to different divisions or different companies. They're different product lines. And so we want to apply the Bionix brand and the process and how we approach the market, the same way so that we can have a better outcome for each one. And bringing that together, I think really solidified it with employees as well. It started to become one company versus, I work on this division, I don't work on that division. So
Right. And didn't you share with me earlier that you were inspired by one of your key partners, an injection molding supplier, on how you wanted to kind of reshape the building, the culture, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the great ideas don't have to come from inside these walls, right? I mean, if you see great ideas outside and people doing great things, I had established a very close relationship with the president of that company. And I said, I expect now all of our other suppliers to live up to your standard. But yet when I go back to our facility, we're not living up to that standard. So, hey, will you show me what you do, show me your processes. They had a clean facility process, they had 5S process, they had all these things and how they approached just the maintenance of the facility. Everything must stay in as new condition at all times. And so we basically started copying all of that and implementing it at that time, we were in 3 different facilities and we epoxied every floor, painted every wall and ceiling, put in new lighting. The doors that used to stay open are closed. It's a controlled environment, much more in line with the medical device company. And then along with that came all the processes that we started to follow in the manufacturing space. And then again, extending that into the office because, the same thought process applies in the manufacturing space as it does in the office space. And employees really latched onto that. And, what's really great is when you have a concept and you bring it to the team and start to put it into place, and then they start to take ownership of it, and then they just run with it, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes theirs, and that's really what happened, and that's how I think you can be successful in those kind of changes. Is you kind of explain the vision, where we're going and why, get the team on board, and then from there, again, it becomes their vision.
Yeah. It's amazing what a facelift in a building can do for employee morale. I went through one
Oh,
of those as
absolutely.
well. And it was simple things. We were putting, soundproofing boards on the walls so that, people in cubes could have more private conversations. And I mean, it just drove so much gratitude and, employee loyalty, I think, because we were making their space better.
Right. And we also knew that our culture is very much a family culture. It's the culture that Drew and Jim built. We take care of our employees first, and our employees take care of our customers and partners. And so we do a lot for our employees, and our employees care about each other. They care about the company. So yeah, you want to create that environment, for that to happen, and you want to continue that environment with everything that you do, and as you move forward. So
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about innovation because this is your DNA, right? This was specifically started on Jim Hutner's innovation and the team's instincts. But you've said that over the last 5 to 7 years, you've deliberately shifted where ideas come from. So you built an outside network of clinicians, inventors, tech transfer offices. How did you do that without the people who've been here for 20 plus years feeling like you were telling them that their instincts don't matter anymore?
Yeah, and the answer is, we never did that. So we still today evaluate new ideas every single month, and we have quite a few ideas that we evaluate every single month. And it is always every single month, it's a mix of ideas that came from inside the walls and ideas that came from outside the walls. So some of it, I think, over time happens naturally as you are innovative and we create unique devices and we show them. We go to conferences and we showcase our products, and clinicians come up and they're like, what we love to hear is, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Or, oh wow, the oh yeah factor. Like, this is great. I wish I had this years ago. You get that reaction. And then the next thing it triggers for a lot of clinicians is, I have an idea. This is a great idea, but I have something I've been thinking about. And we put a process together right away that is, okay, before you share your idea with us, let's get a non-disclosure in place. Let's make sure your idea is protected. We're not in the business of stealing ideas. We want to partner with you. So get that in place, and then they would share the ideas, and we started to get more and more ideas that way, and it's great. It did not stop the ideas that were coming from inside the building. It never stopped the ideas that were coming from Jim Hutner, because he's that inventive mind. He just constantly, he still is part of our business and still bringing new ideas. He's on leave for the summer and came in just to share a brand new idea that he had taken all the way to a kind of a physical prototype that he wanted to show me. So it's very much within our culture, collaborative environment here, creative environment. So we have employees, not just from our product development team, that submit ideas. They understand the process of how to submit a new idea. And then, yeah, like you said, we work with tech transfer departments from large IDNs. We work with down to the individual inventor who can bring us ideas. And so what we've had to do is really learn how to say no.
Right.
Because you get a lot of ideas and you really have to make sure this could be a great idea, but is it a great idea for Bionix?
Right.
And if it's not, then we will help them, point them in the right direction, maybe make a connection with someone that we think might be a better partner. But we have to be disciplined to say no. And that's if it's, the founder of the company's idea, Jim Hutner's idea. If it's an employee's idea, if it's somebody from outside the company, we have to be disciplined to say no. And wait for the right ideas to kind of latch onto that kind of fit into the vision of where we're going with the organization.
Sure. Do you give your engineers a chance to go out into the field to actually meet with clinicians, to watch the jobs to be done? I found that in my career was really helpful, because they were building tools that doctors use to treat patients. And if you're not doing the Gemba walk and seeing how these things are being used in real practice, I think it limits some of their creativity. How do your engineers get exposure to seeing these tools in action?
Yeah, we do that whenever we can. It's gotten harder and harder to do that and to be in front of patients when procedures are being done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more difficult. But they do go out and they go into the physician office setting and talk with the physicians and the other practitioners within the office, and talk about how they see the environment. If they can be in with patients and kind of see how things are actually being used, they do that. We have a clinical advisory board that we put together. So the core segments that we're in, like pediatrics, family practice, urgent care, ER. We have representatives. We have nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians that are on that clinical advisory board. So we bring them in. And the first thing we always talk about isn't products and ideas. It's what's happening in your world. Like, what are the things that are the major initiatives within your facility or system? What are the challenges you're facing? And of course, we hear about things, so we'll bring up specific ones sometimes. And we do that for almost the first half of the meeting before we actually get into, okay, here's some of the projects we're working on, or here's some of the projects that we're evaluating. So, that is a key part as well, to connect our engineering and product development team with customers. And then, we're involved in product category management, where we share a lot of what's going on in the industry. What have we learned, from we have a corporate board of advisors as well, that is all executives from the medical device space.
Mm-hmm.
So they share ideas with us, and then we share it with the team. So we've got a lot of different ways that they can get exposed to what's happening in our customers' world, an ecosystem within the physician office that they should be thinking about and applying as they're developing new products.
Cool. So this is something that I thought was very intriguing. So your brand is built on simplicity, right? Bionix is the ear curette company. Simple tools, simple innovation. And then recently you launched One Light, which is a rechargeable platform that powers a whole family of compatible tools. So that's not as simple as where you've been, right?
Sure.
And that requires platform adoption, a learning curve, a purchasing decision that looks different for your end user customers. So what was the catalyst that made you want to complicate the thing that you've been known for in terms of simplicity?
Yeah. Well, I think it's simply understanding our customer environment. So again, I'll reference back to 2020, but the amount of change, in our customers' world that has happened since 2020 is tremendous. And things have become more complicated in a lot of ways, right? I mean, staffing issues, they don't have enough time, they don't have enough staff, they have to see, a growing patient demand, and try to still give the same level, high level of quality of care to the patient. There's burnout with clinicians, there's early retirement. I mean, there's so many things that they're going through. There's cost pressures, there's also pressures to drive revenue. And so just thinking about, well, we have a cool product, it's very innovative for this procedure, and just talking in that sense, I don't think takes a big enough, takes into account the full picture. And again, we use the concept of, we went to a platform, but also thinking more of an ecosystem, the ecosystem of our customer and a physician office. What are all the things that are happening before, during, and after a procedure? And so I think we had to adapt. We had to change to meet the changing needs of our customers. And it isn't simple, right? As it used to be, back, years ago. So it's not simple for them. And so I don't think we can take a simple approach as well. I think we need to try to build as much of that in as we can so that, it's a much broader and bigger value proposition for our customer.
Hmm. And I loved how you went back to your term. So you said simply understanding our customers' world. I think that's your gold nugget right there, because
Yeah.
a lot of companies are there to sell a widget, right? And the ones that take time to really understand what's happening in the customer's world, speak their language, find solutions that benefit them either clinically or economically or both, ideally, right, are the ones that are going to win in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're just approaching it from, hey, well, let's create an innovative product, then you talk to the clinician who's doing the procedure and you take into account those things just specifically related to the procedure. But as you start to broaden out, you understand the role of the office manager, and you understand the role of, say, the director of primary care for a health system who's responsible for the business side of each physician office. And that each physician office has metrics that they have to meet. And those metrics change every single year to some degree. But what are those metrics, and what are they trying to drive within the system, and within patient care, that we need to understand? And if you're, again, just talking to a clinician about a procedure, you just don't get that. So there's a lot of conversations and listening to customers at different levels of the organization, all the way up to supply chain. And like I said, at the office level, at the system level, and at the office level as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned that someone said to you, this is where this idea came from, right? What about the DeWalt strategy? Tell us about that and how it led to OneLight.
Yeah. So we decided to create a rechargeable light source. And we had our lighted ear curette since 2004, very successful product, had a single-use light source. Essentially, it lasted for a little more than the 50 curettes that come in the box. It eventually would die out, but when you order another 50 curettes, you get another light source. And that model worked really well. But, customers said, hey, I really would like to have a rechargeable light source, or replace the battery. And, we kind of listened and we said, we have to do this. They're asking us for this. We need to provide it, but we didn't really know the best strategy of how to roll it out, but we knew it was the right thing to do. So we developed the technology. And as we had it ready for launch and we were talking about strategy for how do we launch the product, we were kind of in an in-between in terms of where do we take it? Do we just focus it on this set of customers, or do we take it to everyone? And as we were in a product category management team, a cross-functional team meeting, our VP of sales said, what about the DeWalt tool, tool system, that concept? And it just literally clicked in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew what he was saying, and I instantly kind of took it to a whole vision of how we could apply our rechargeable light source and bring value to customers. And so I kind of took off in that direction and built, just kind of the vision and the initial messaging and everything for the concept of what it's going to be, and how we're going to have a full platform of products that are all going to be driven by this light source, which means every one of these tools now is going to have visualization added into the tool, which is massive value for our customers if they can actually see and they don't have to balance multiple tools. So the value prop became very clear. And so it kind of put it together to a point. I pitched the whole concept back to our product category management team, with the name One Light. And then from there, pitched it to our leadership team and then to the company as a whole. And as I pitched it to the company as a whole in the company meeting, I unveiled two countdown clocks. One was going on the second floor, one was going on the first floor. And the point of that was, one, to create a sense of urgency, and two, to create a sense of excitement. Like, we are moving towards something really big here.
Yeah.
This One Light platform concept. And so we need to be excited about it, but we need to have a sense of urgency, because I also put a 6-month timeline in place. So we had multiple product development projects that we needed to complete in order to launch this. And we had a very big commercialization project on our hands that we needed to create the right messaging and look and feel, and the story behind it. And I challenged our team, by April 1 of 2026, we're going to launch this. And I got a lot of looks like, are you crazy? I don't know if we can do this, but we did it. It's amazing when if you're used to kind of achieving at a certain level and you say, you know what, we're gonna push way beyond that. We're gonna go to here, and you set that as the expectation, and you get buy-in. You make it happen, and our team made it happen. And I think they were very proud of themselves and each other as a team that we were able to accomplish that. And so, now we're on a path of every 6 months, we're going to be introducing multiple new things that are coming into this One Light platform, and continue to grow the platform, continue to grow the value of the One Light platform and the different tools that our customers can use with the light source. And what that does is it gives them better tools for more procedures, which means more procedures done more efficiently in terms of time, more successfully with a good outcome for the patient, less referrals, having to refer out to specialists. They can actually be successful in the office. They don't have to refer out as much to ENT or other specialists. So, there's a lot that kind of comes with this growing platform of illuminated tools that add that visualization to the procedure.
And now you've got a nice cadence of new product introductions that are coming right after each other, which reps love, because they're always being asked what's new, right? And so
exactly. And reps love product lines that create the repeat sale, but also to have organic growth, meaning every time we add new products into this, it's just naturally going to grow, because customers will want, yes, I want that one, or I want that one, to add those in. So not only do you have the repeat sales of the original products, but it just keeps organically growing. So it works really well for them as well.
Well, it sounds like you've got everything under control there at Bionix.
For the controlled chaos, right? Is that how?
Exactly.
Probably a better way to.
For the owner or business owner who's listening, whose company still runs on one person's instincts, maybe the founder or the person who's been there for 30 years, what's the first thing that you would tell them to do to make that survivable before they're forced into it, with the private equity or some other change coming that, you've learned through this arc of your career?
Well, I think surround yourself with great people is kind of the biggest advice that I can give. And it's what I did. So I have a skill set, and there's things that I'm good at. And then there's things that I'm definitely not good at, or that's, I'm not the best at. But so I try to surround myself with really smart people, and people that are really good in different areas in different ways. And then I listen to them, right? And give them the platform to make change and to bring ideas and to execute. Because if you're going to hire good people, then you're going to tell them what to do, that just kind of doesn't work, right? So being open and bring in strong people that are better than you in ways. And not be kind of challenged by that, but be excited by that and let them do their thing. The other thing I would say is, I think a lot of founders of companies and smaller companies, they don't necessarily like people to tell them what they should do or how they should run their business. And I think one of the things they miss out sometimes is on having a board of advisors. So a board of advisors of very talented executives, whether it's in a variety of different industries, or for ours, what I have is it's very focused in the medical device space. But these are leaders in our medical device space, very well-known people, leaders. And, we we structure those meetings so that what I want is I want them to get value out of the meeting, just, while we're getting value out of the meeting. So that it's meaningful to them, and it's definitely meaningful to us. But tee up different conversational things and things that we're dealing with, and almost every single time, multiple folks in the room are dealing with the same thing, or have dealt with it and have come up with solutions that worked really, really well. And then you don't have to try to do it yourself, right? You understand what they did, what's successful, and you apply it to your business. So I think being open to having people from outside your walls come in and talk about your business and tell you some things that they think would work really well to improve your business or to help you grow. I think you have to be open to that. And sometimes, unfortunately, owners of businesses and things aren't open to that. And I think if you do, it'll be a tremendous value to your business.
Yeah, and something else that I loved when you said, if you're going to hire smart people and then tell them what to do, then what's the point, right?
Right.
One of the favorite quotes that I think a mentor of mine shared with me a long time ago was, don't tell people what to do, tell them who they are.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's, to your point, you set the bar even higher with your April 1 deadline, and people rose to the occasion, like invite people to rise, right?
Right. And once they rise to that level, they realize, what, we can do this. What else can we do? Exactly.
Well, Chris, for people that want to learn more about you or about Bionix, where should they go?
Bionix.com obviously has a ton of great information there, and we're constantly adding to it and adding to the tools and things that we offer our customers. So that's obviously a great way to learn about Bionix. We utilize partners across the industry. We have our team obviously internally, but we utilize MTMC, which is an outsourced rep group that does a phenomenal job for us. We partner with all the major distributor partners, and they all know Bionix, and they know who we are and what we do and the innovation that we bring. So I guess there's a lot of different venues by which you can learn about Bionix, whether you're a customer or a potential partner. And of course, I love to have conversations and to explore new opportunities, and very much available as well.
Okay, well, great. Well, Chris, this has been one of the most grounded conversations I've had about what it actually takes to grow a founder-led company without losing its soul when private equity arrives. Because, private equity likes to go fast. They want value for shareholders, right? But you didn't hide from that. You looked at the hard things, the 4 failed attempts, the market disruption, the resource constraints, and you just kept iterating. So thank you for your leadership there.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one other thing is, in that process, is in those 3-4 years of going through the process multiple times, I met a lot of private equity partners. So if you have the ability to choose the right partner, because there are a lot of private equity groups I met that I knew very quickly, this is not somebody that I would want to be partnered with. And, Drew and Jim gave me the opportunity to be part of the process. And at the end of the day, we all selected Argosy, and they've been a phenomenal partner for us. So, so as you're going down that road, choosing the right partner is critical.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, for our Think Small listening audience, if today's podcast made you think differently about professionalization of your business, about building boards of advisors, or about how to navigate disruption without giving up what really makes you different, please share this with someone on your team who needs to hear it. That's the way we grow this conversation. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Chris, for your time, and we'll see you all next time on the Think Small podcast.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?